Welcome to this explainer. All right, let's just jump right in. Today, we're taking a phenomenal, basically chronological journey across France. We're going to trace the absolutely fascinating history, the incredibly stubborn traditional production methods, and even the royal connections behind French wine and spirits. And what we're really unpacking here is how this country fiercely, and I mean fiercely, resists modern, mechanized commercialization through some seriously ancient, unyielding laws.
Our agenda for today is packed. We'll be covering Champagne's bubbly beginnings, Burgundy's monks and terroir, regional flavors and pairings, Bordeaux's prestigious crus, Cognac's royal water, and finally, the broader French legacy. Let's get to it.
So our adventure kicks off in Paris and winds down through the historic cellars and sprawling vineyards of Champagne up north, heading down to Burgundy, sweeping west to Bordeaux, and finally moving slightly north again to Cognac. It's an itinerary that perfectly traces the evolution of French liquid gold.
Section 1. Champagne's bubbly beginnings.
Okay, wrap your head around this. There are over 10,000 individual wine growers in the Champagne region. 10,000! But here's the kicker. By strict regional law, they literally have to hand-pick their grapes. No massive harvesting machines allowed whatsoever. Why? Well, machines don't have eyes, right? Hand-picking ensures that the delicate Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay grapes are perfectly selected to preserve their crisp, acidic quality. Actually, during harvest, over 150,000 workers flood the region just to do this monumental task by hand. It's wild.
Once they're picked, famous houses like Nicolas Fouillet use a really meticulous traditional method. First, they create a highly acidic, still white wine. Then comes the real magic, a second fermentation right inside the bottle, where it ages on the lees or yeast cells for a minimum of 15 months. To get that yeast out later without losing all those precious bubbles, they literally freeze the neck of the bottle to minus 50 degrees Celsius. The frozen plug of sediment just shoots right out. Then they add a touch of sugar, depending on how dry they want it, and seal the whole thing with that thick cork and wire cage. It's this incredible fusion of chemistry and ancient tradition.
Section 2. Burgundy's monks and terroir.
Moving south down the famous Route des Grands Crus, we enter Burgundy. And here, we discover a completely different winemaking philosophy, one that is rooted deeply in the earth itself. It's all about the terroir, the climate. A millennium ago, local monks literally tasted the dirt. Yes, they ate dirt to map the region into what they call climats, or terroirs. They essentially proved that Pinot Noir vines grown just a few feet apart will yield completely different flavors purely based on the specific clay and limestone composition they're planted in.
Because the soil is literally everything here, Burgundy ranks its wines strictly by land quality, not brand name. During our tasting inside the 15th century ruins at Marché aux Vins in Beaune, this hierarchy becomes super clear. You start with the broader regional wines. Step up from there is the village wine, where grapes only come from the area around one specific town. Then you've got Premier Cru, sourced from single, premium vineyard plots, and sitting at the absolute peak is the Grand Cru, representing the top 1% of elite soil in the entire region. It's basically a literal map of the earth captured in a bottle.
To put the value of that elite soil into perspective, consider this. A single 1945 vintage bottle from the Grand Cru vineyard known as Romanée Conti sold at auction for an astonishing 750,000 euros. Wow. That tiny plot of land produces maybe 5,000 bottles a year. At that price tag, you aren't just buying wine, you're buying a vanishing piece of history. But here's the thing, that soil only does its job if the vines are desperate. Traditional French law actually bans artificial irrigation in these vineyards. There's a local saying, the vines must suffer. And it's true. Without easy surface water, the roots are forced to dig deep, deep down into the limestone. So, instead of growing large and leafy, the stressed-out plant concentrates all its energy into producing small, robust, intensely flavorful grapes.
Section 3. Regional flavors and pairings.
Now, these strict regional traditions don't just stop at what's in your glass. They bleed directly into the local culinary identity. Food and drink in France are intrinsically linked by geography. Take the Kir, for example. In Dijon, our group dinners traditionally kick off with this aperitif. It's born entirely from the region, pairing the tart local aligoté white grape with a sweet regional blackcurrant syrup. It's literally a taste of your immediate surroundings before you even take your first bite of food.
And the food itself relies heavily on this liquid gold. During our immersive Gate 1 group dinners,
Classic local dishes like rich beef Burgundy stew or oeufs and mirette, which, by the way, are these perfectly poached eggs swimming in a savory red wine sauce, they absolutely take center stage. Even authentic Dijon mustard isn't made with standard vinegar. True Burgundy mustard is crafted using the juice of unripe local grapes or local white wine. It totally completes this immersive terroir experience.
Section 4. Bordeaux's prestigious cruise.
All right, let's shift gears and head west to the massive aristocratic estates of Bordeaux. Here, the focus moves away from the soil and heavily toward the prestige of the chateau itself. Geographically, Bordeaux is split right down the middle by the Garonne River estuary, and the two sides couldn't be more different. The left bank features this warm, gravelly soil that perfectly nurtures bold Cabernet Sauvignon. But hop over to the right bank, and the soil shifts to cool clay and limestone, which is an absolute paradise for the softer, fruitier Merlot grape.
It's a fascinating contrast between these two philosophies. While Burgundy obsessively focuses on tiny, single-grape plots dictated by monks 1,000 years ago, Bordeaux is a whole different ballgame. They focus on the massive Chateau brand. We're talking gigantic estates, some costing millions of euros per acre. And their winemakers? They're master blenders, carefully mixing Cabernet and Merlot together to create a highly specific, signature house style.
But don't get me wrong, they still adhere to unyielding ancient laws. For instance, exploring the 12th century underground limestone caves of Noir-Galaud and touring renowned estates like Château Le Rose-Brusson in Saint-Emilion, we learn a very strict rule. To achieve the coveted Grand Cru classification here, the wine absolutely must be aged in handcrafted oak barrels for a minimum of 12 months. And those damp, 15 degrees Celsius medieval caves, they provide the exact perfect environment for this aging process.
Section 5. Cognac's Royal Water. For our final tasting, we're traveling north to the magnificent Château Royal de Cognac, which happens to be the royal birthplace of King Francis I. Now, cognac production is a masterclass in resisting modern shortcuts. To legally even call it cognac, they have to use a highly acidic white grape called Ugni Blanc. They ferment it into this very sour, frankly undrinkable wine. But then comes the transformation. They double distill that wine in pure copper pot stills. The result? A perfectly clear, incredibly potent alcohol called eau de vie, or the water of life.
Then, the aging begins in thick oak barrels, housed right within the 15th century walls of the chateau. But here is perhaps the most poetic part of the whole process. Every single year, about 2% of this precious liquid just evaporates right through the wood and into the atmosphere. The local master blenders romantically call this the angel's share. It literally feeds the black fungus growing on the cellar walls, a beautiful, albeit very expensive, sacrifice to time.
So how do you know exactly what you're drinking? Cognac uses a strict, surprisingly English-influenced grading system, a remnant of when the region was under English rule centuries ago. VS means the youngest blend in the bottle is aged at least 2 years. VSOP pushes that minimum to 4 years, and XO, or extra old, contains liquid aged for 10 to 40 years, sometimes even longer. Master blenders, like the ones at Château Royal, meticulously mix dozens of these different ages together to create their signature, super luxurious profiles.
Section 6. The French Legacy.
So let's take a step back for a second. What is the crucial takeaway from this incredible journey through France's vineyards, caves, and royal cellars? Well, when you look at the raw production volume, elite regions like Burgundy make up merely 2% of the country's whole output. Champagne is just 8%. Bordeaux, for all its massive estates, is only 10%. This brilliantly illustrates a core philosophy. These world-renowned regions are fiercely focused on uncompromising quality, historical preservation, and respecting the land. They are explicitly not focused on mass output.
Which brings me to this final thought for you to chew on. In an era of rapid, mechanized commercialization, where brands are constantly looking for cheaper, faster ways to produce goods, France leans hard the opposite way. They force their vines to suffer, they handpick millions of grapes, they willingly lose 2% of their cognac to the angels every single year. Is this stubborn, beautiful, completely unyielding dedication to ancient tradition the true secret to their unmatched, timeless legacy? I'll let you be the judge of that. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.